This is my story. The story of my wife's infidelity. The story of how she cheated on me 43 times with different people. It's a tale of betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimately a painful journey toward finding myself again. It is not an easy story to tell, but it is one that needs to be shared. This is how I discovered the woman I loved was a stranger, and how I found the strength to rebuild my life from the shattered pieces of our marriage. Emily and I met in college, and from the moment we locked eyes, it felt like fate had orchestrated our meeting. We were both ambitious, sharing dreams of a bright future together. After graduation, we landed decent jobs, Emily working for her father's small business and me joining a large corporation. Life seemed perfect. We were deeply in love and excited about building our life together. We got married at 25, a beautiful ceremony surrounded by family and friends. Everything seemed to fall into place effortlessly. We both excelled in our careers, bought a cozy house in a nice neighborhood, and enjoyed traveling whenever we could. Our life was the epitome of happiness and success. For the first few years of our marriage, everything was going well. We supported each other through thick and thin, celebrated our achievements, and comforted each other during setbacks. Emily's father's business flourished under her leadership after he passed away unexpectedly, and I couldn't have been prouder of her. She transformed from an ordinary worker to running the whole company, earning even more than I did. It was a remarkable feat, and I admired her dedication and resilience. Despite our demanding jobs, we made time for each other. Date nights, weekend getaways, and spontaneous adventures kept our relationship vibrant. We often talked about having children one day, but for now, we were content with our busy yet fulfilling lives. Emily was my rock, my partner, my best friend. However, about a year ago, I started noticing subtle changes in Emily's behavior. She became more distant and often seemed preoccupied. I brushed it off initially, thinking it was just work stress. Her job required long hours, and she was under a lot of pressure to maintain her father's legacy. I tried to be supportive, taking on more household responsibilities to ease her burden, but the signs became harder to ignore. She began working late more frequently and took unexpected business trips. Our once lively conversations dwindled to mundane exchanges about our day. Intimacy, both emotional and physical, became rare. When I asked if everything was okay, she'd assure me she was just tired or stressed. One night, as we sat in our living room, Emily's phone buzzed with a message. She quickly glanced at it and put it face down on the table, an action that caught my attention. It was unlike her to hide things from me. A knot of unease formed in my stomach, but I pushed it aside, not wanting to jump to conclusions. I told myself it was probably just a work message. Still, the doubts lingered. I found myself overanalyzing her actions, trying to decipher if there was more to her behavior. Was she hiding something from me? My mind raced with possibilities, but infidelity was the furthest thing from my thoughts. Emily had always been honest and devoted. The idea of her being unfaithful seemed absurd. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a painful journey that would unravel the very fabric of our marriage. It was a quiet Friday night, and Emily had just come home from another late night at work. She offered a brief kiss on my cheek before heading upstairs to shower. I was left alone in the living room, staring blankly at the TV, unable to shake the unease that had been building inside me for weeks. I decided to try to distract myself with some mindless scrolling on my phone, but my thoughts kept drifting back to Emily. Her recent behavior was out of character, and my mind couldn't stop replaying the little moments that seemed off. The way she guarded her phone, the sudden business trips, the late nights, none of it added up. While waiting for Emily to finish her shower, I noticed her phone on the coffee table. It was unlocked, a rare occurrence given how guarded she had become. My heart pounded as I reached for it, torn between respecting her privacy and needing to quell my growing suspicions. My hand moved almost on its own, and before I knew it, I was scrolling through her messages. Most were innocuous, but then I found a thread with a contact saved as J. The messages were vague, filled with inside jokes and cryptic references. My stomach twisted as I read one from earlier that evening. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Last night was amazing." My heart sank. Who was Jay? And what did Emily mean by last night? I scrolled further, and the messages only got more suggestive. My hands trembled as I pieced together what seemed like an intimate relationship between my wife and this mysterious person. Just then, I heard the bathroom door open. I quickly locked her phone and put it back on the table, my mind racing. Emily walked into the room, looking refreshed, her hair damp from the shower. She smiled at me, but I could see the tension in her eyes. "What's wrong, Mark? You look like you've seen a ghost," she said, her tone light but with an edge that made my skin crawl. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. "I was just thinking about us. You've been working so late recently, and I feel like we're drifting apart." She sighed, rolling her eyes. "Mark, not this again. I have told you work is crazy right now. I have a lot of responsibilities, and I need you to be supportive." "I am supportive, Emily. But it's more than that. You've been distant, and tonight I saw some messages on your phone." Her eyes widened slightly, but she quickly masked it with a look of irritation. "You went through my phone? Seriously, Mark? That is a new low even for you. I didn't mean to invade your privacy, but what am I supposed to think when I see messages like that? Who is Jay? What is going on?" Emily's expression hardened, and she crossed her arms. "Jay is just a colleague. We joke around sometimes, that's all. You're being paranoid." "Paranoid?" "The messages didn't seem like jokes, Emily. They seemed intimate." "You're reading too much into it," she snapped. "Why don't you trust me? I'm busting my ass at work to make sure we have a good life, and this is how you repay me? By snooping through my phone and accusing me of God knows what." Her words stung, but I couldn't back down. "I want to trust you, Emily. But things have been different. You are different. I need to know what's going on." She glared at me, her face a mask of contempt. "Maybe if you focused on your own life instead of playing detective, we wouldn't be having this conversation." With that, she turned and stormed upstairs, leaving me alone with my thoughts. The doubt gnawed at me, but I didn't have 100 proof. All I had were suspicious messages and a gut feeling that something was terribly wrong. As I sat in the dimly lit living room, the weight of uncertainty pressed down on me. I knew I had to find out the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, was hiding something, and I couldn't rest until I uncovered it. It was a cold, drizzly evening, and after a long, grueling week at work, I decided to unwind with a drink. My friend Tom had been nagging me to hang out, so I finally agreed. We chose a small, cozy bar on the edge of town, a place we frequented during our college days. Emily had told me she would be working late again, so I figured it was the perfect time to catch up with Tom and forget about my worries for a while. The bar was dimly lit, filled with the murmur of conversations and the clinking of glasses. Tom and I settled into a booth near the back, ordering our first round of drinks. As we chatted, reminiscing about old times, I felt a small sense of relief. It was good to be out, surrounded by familiar faces and enjoying a break from the tension at home. But that sense of ease was short-lived. Halfway through my second beer, I glanced towards the entrance and froze. There, sitting at a table near the bar, was Emily. She was leaning in close to a man I didn't recognize, laughing at something he said. My heart pounded in my chest as I watched them, my mind racing. She had said she was at work. What was she doing here with another man? "Mark, you okay?" Tom's voice snapped me out of my daze. "Yeah, I just need a minute," I muttered, standing up and heading towards Emily's table. As I approached, the man noticed me first. His eyes widened in recognition of the situation, and he quickly got up, mumbling an excuse before hurrying out of the bar. Emily turned to see what had caused his sudden departure, and her face went pale when she saw me. "Mark, what are you doing here?" she stammered, trying to mask her shock with a weak smile. "I could ask you the same thing," I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. "You told me you were working late." I was, but then I finished early and decided to grab a drink," she said, her eyes darting around the room as if looking for an escape. "And who was that guy?" I asked, gesturing towards the door where her companion had just fled. "Just a friend from work," she replied too quickly. "We sometimes grab a drink after a long day. It's no big deal." "No big deal?" I repeated, my anger rising. "You lied to me, Emily. You said you were working late, not out drinking with some guy. Why do you always have to make a scene?" she hissed, her eyes flashing with irritation. "I don't need to explain every little detail of my life to you." "Maybe not," I shot back. "But when you lie about where you are and who you are with, it raises questions. Who is he really? And dawn to lie to me." "You're being ridiculous, Mark. He's just a colleague. You're overreacting. Overreacting. Do you even hear yourself?" You've been distant for months, hiding things from me, and now I find you here, lying about your whereabouts. What am I supposed to think?" Emily stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I can deal with this right now. I'm going home." "No, we're dealing with this now," I said, grabbing her arm to stop her from leaving. "Why are you lying to me? What's going on?" She yanked her arm free, glaring at me with a mix of anger and defiance. "Nothing is going on, Mark. You are the one making it an issue. Emily, I am not blind. I saw the messages. I saw how you were with him just now. Tell me the truth." For a moment, she just stared at me, her jaw clenched. Then she let out a bitter laugh. "Fine. You want the truth? Maybe I'm tired of being treated like a suspect in my own marriage. Maybe I needed someone to talk to, someone who doesn't question my every move." "That's not an answer," I said through gritted teeth. "Who is he? Are you having an affair?" The bar had gone quiet, with everyone now watching our confrontation. Emily's face was flushed with embarrassment and anger. "This isn't the place for this, Mark. I am leaving." Without another word, she turned and walked out of the bar, leaving me standing there, seething with a mix of betrayal and frustration. Tom approached me, concern etched on his face. "Hey man, let's get out of here," he suggested softly. I nodded, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. As we left the bar, I couldn't shake the image of Emily with that man, and her refusal to give me a straight answer only fueled my suspicions. The drive home was silent, and when I walked into the house, Emily was nowhere to be seen. I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I walked into the house feeling the weight of the evening pressing down on me. The place was eerily quiet, and I knew Emily was somewhere inside, probably preparing herself for the confrontation she knew was inevitable. I found her in the living room, sitting on the couch with her arms crossed, a defensive look in her eyes. "Emily, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady but laced with anger. She looked up at me, her expression hard. "About what, Mark? You've already made up your mind about what you think is going on." "Don't do that," I snapped. "Don't try to turn this around on me. I want to know who that guy was and why you lied about where you were." She sighed, rolling her eyes. "I told you, he is just a friend from work. We grab drinks sometimes. It's not a big deal." "Not a big deal," I echoed. "You lied to me, Emily. You said you were working late, not out drinking with some guy." "Because I knew how you'd react," she shot back. "Just like you were doing now, making a scene, jumping to conclusions. Can you blame me? You've been distant, secretive. I saw the messages, Emily. They weren't just friendly." She stood up, her eyes blazing with anger. "So what? I'm not allowed to have friends? You're the one who's been distant, Mark. You're always busy with work or out with your friends. When was the last time we did something together?" I was taken aback by her accusation. "That's not fair. I've been trying to be supportive. I've been picking up the slack at home because you said work was stressful." "Supportive?" She laughed bitterly. "By spying on me? Going through my phone? That's not support, Mark. That is control. I wasn't spying on you," I said through gritted teeth. "I was worried. You've changed, Emily. We've changed." She threw her hands up in frustration. "Of course I've changed. I'm under a lot of pressure at work, and I don't feel like I can talk to you about it because you're always too busy or too tired. So yes, I've been spending time with someone who listens to me." My heart sank. "Are you saying this is my fault?" "I am saying it is not all black and white," she replied, her voice softening. "I needed someone to talk to, someone who didn't judge me. And yes, maybe I should have told you, but I didn't want to deal with this, exactly what is happening right now." I ran a hand through my hair, feeling exhausted. "So you're not having an affair?" "No, Mark, I am not," she said firmly. "I've never cheated on you. But you need to understand that I feel lonely too. You're not the only one struggling." I sat down on the couch, my anger giving way to confusion and hurt. "Why didn't you just tell me? Because it is hard to talk to you when you are always busy or distracted. And when I do get your attention, it feels like you are just going through the motions." Her words stung because I knew there was some truth to them. I had been preoccupied with work and other things, and maybe I hadn't been as present as I should have been. "I am sorry, Emily," I said quietly. "I didn't realize you felt that way. I thought I was helping by giving you space." She sat down next to me, her eyes softening. "I know you mean well, Mark, but we need to start talking to each other, really talking. Not just about our day, but about how we were feeling, what we need from each other." I nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and guilt. "I want to make this work, Emily. I don't need to want to lose you." "You are not going to lose me," she said, taking my hand. "But we have to be honest with each other. No more secrets. No more secrets," I agreed. "And no more lies. If something is bothering you, tell me, even if it's about me." She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I promise." We sat there in silence for a while, holding hands and letting the tension slowly dissipate. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a start. We had a long way to go, but for the first time in months, I felt like we were moving in the right direction. The next few days were challenging. We had several long conversations, delving into the issues that had been plaguing our relationship. It was painful and uncomfortable, but it was also necessary. We talked about our fears, our insecurities, and our hopes for the future. It wasn't easy, but we were both committed to making it work. Emily assured me that her relationship with Jay was strictly platonic, and though I still had my doubts, I decided to give her the benefit of the doubt. Trust had to start somewhere, and I wanted to believe that she was telling the truth. I also made a conscious effort to be more present, to listen more, and to show her that I cared. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Emily turned to me and smiled. "Thank you, Mark, for listening, for understanding. I know it's not easy." I squeezed her hand. "We are in this together, Emily. We always have been, and we always will be." For the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. It would take time to rebuild the trust and intimacy we had lost, but we were both willing to put in the effort. And that, I realized, was the most important thing of all. The days that followed our confrontation were tense, but I was hopeful. Emily and I had committed to being more open and honest with each other, and despite my lingering doubts, I wanted to trust her. I wanted to believe that we could work through this and come out stronger on the other side. That morning, I went to work feeling more optimistic than I had in a long time. Emily had the day off, and I thought it would be a nice gesture to surprise her with flowers, something I hadn't done in a while. I left the office early, excited to see the look on her face when I walked through the door with a bouquet of her favorite roses. As I pulled into the driveway, a smile spread across my face. I grabbed the flowers from the passenger seat and headed inside, my heart light with anticipation. The house was quiet, and I hoped Emily was relaxing, maybe catching up on some much-needed rest. But as I walked down the hallway towards our bedroom, I heard something that made my blood run cold. It was a muffled sound at first, but as I got closer, it became unmistakable. Emily was moaning. My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of fear and anger bubbling up inside me. The flower slipped from my grasp, falling to the floor as I approached the bedroom door. I pushed it open and felt my world shatter. There in our bed was Emily with another man. But it wasn't TJ. It was someone else entirely. They both froze, shock and guilt plastered across their faces. The man quickly scrambled to get dressed, mumbling apologies as he rushed past me. I didn't even bother to stop him. My eyes were fixed on Emily, who was clutching the sheets to her chest, her face pale. "What the hell, Emily?" I shouted, my voice shaking with rage and betrayal. "Mark, I can explain," she stammered, tears welling up in her eyes. "Explain? What could you possibly say to make this okay?" I demanded. "Who is he?" He is just someone I met," she said weakly, avoiding my gaze. "Just someone you met? In our bed? How many times, Emily? How many times have you done this behind my back? Mark, please, you have to understand. I was lonely, and you've been so distant. I needed someone to talk to, someone who made me feel wanted." "Don't you dare put this on me," I snapped. "I've been trying, Emily. I've been here working my ass off to support us, to make you happy. And this is how you repay me? I didn't mean for it to happen." "It just did," she said, her voice breaking. "You were always so busy, always wrapped up in your own world. I felt like I didn't matter to you anymore. So you decided to find someone else? That's your solution?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I loved, had betrayed me in the worst possible way. "Mark, I am sorry. I didn't know what else to do. I've been so unhappy, and I thought you didn't care." "Didn't care," I echoed, my voice rising. "I've done nothing but care, Emily. I have been here trying to fix things between us. And while I'm doing that, you were out there with whoever that was. It is not just about you, Mark. You shut me out. You stopped making me feel special. When was the last time you really listened to me? Really tried to understand what I was going through? I've been trying, Emily. I've been trying to make this work. but it seems like you checked out a long time ago." We stood there staring at each other, the weight of her betrayal hanging heavily in the air. I felt a mix of emotions: anger, hurt, sadness, and an overwhelming sense of loss. "I don't know if I can do this anymore," I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. "Mark, please don't say that. We can get through this. I'll do whatever it takes." "I love you," she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "Love? If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this," I said, my own eyes filling with tears. "I need some time to think. I can be here right now." I turned and walked out of the bedroom, leaving her sobbing on the bed. As I stepped over the fallen flowers and out of the house, I felt a hollow ache in my chest. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, had been turned upside down. I got into my car and drove, not knowing where I was going, only that I needed to get away. Away from the lies, the betrayal, and the pain. Away from the woman who had broken my heart. I drove aimlessly, the betrayal replaying in my mind like a nightmare I couldn't escape. Eventually, I found myself outside the same bar where I had first seen Emily with Jay. I parked the car and walked in, hoping to drown my sorrows in the anonymity of a crowd and a few strong drinks. The bar was dimly lit and filled with the low hum of conversations and soft music. I found an empty stool at the bar and ordered a whiskey, hoping the burn would numb the pain gnawing at my insides. As I took my first sip, I scanned the room, half expecting to see Emily with another man. But tonight, she was nowhere to be seen. I was about halfway through my second drink when a man slid onto the stool next to me. He was middle-aged, with a scruffy beard and tired eyes. He nodded at me and ordered a beer. "Rough night?" he asked, his voice gruff but not unfriendly. "You could say that," I replied, not in the mood for small talk but too drained to be rude. "Yeah, I get it." "This place sees a lot of rough nights," he said, taking a swig of his beer. "You come here often?" "Not really. Just needed a drink," I said, trying to keep my answers short. He nodded, as if he understood. "Name Carl, by the way." "Mark," I said, shaking his hand out of politeness. For a few minutes we sat in silence, sipping our drinks. Then Carl spoke again, his tone casual. "You know, I was here the other night. Saw you having a bit of a heated conversation with a lady." My stomach tightened. "Yeah, that was my wife." He gave me a sympathetic look. "Tough break, man. I overheard some of it. Sorry to say, but that wasn't the first time I've seen her here." I turned to face him, my heart pounding. "What do you mean?" Carl shrugged, his eyes filled with pity. "I've seen her here with different men. Not just once or twice, but often. Different faces, same behavior. Laughing, flirting, and then they leave together." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt the room spinning as I tried to process what he was saying. "Are you sure? Maybe it was someone else." He shook his head. "I'm sure, Mark. I don't make it a habit to get into other people's business, but it's hard not to notice when it is the same woman every time." "I'm sorry, man. I figured you should know." I stared into my glass, the weight of his words pressing down on me. The image of Emily, my Emily, with different men in this very bar, was too much to bear. I felt a surge of anger and pain, mixed with a deep, aching sadness. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, my voice hoarse. Carl sighed. "Because you seemed like a decent guy, and you deserve to know the truth, no matter how much it hurts." I nodded, feeling numb. "Thanks, I guess." He patted my shoulder. "Look, man, I'm really sorry. It's a tough spot you are in, but you'll get through it. Just take care of yourself." With that, he got up and left, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I sat there for a long time, replaying everything in my mind. Emily's lies, her betrayal, and now this revelation. It felt like my entire world had crumbled, leaving me with nothing but pain and confusion. Eventually, I paid my tab and stumbled out of the bar, the cold night air hitting me like a slap. I stood there for a moment, trying to steady myself, before getting into my car. I couldn't go home. Not yet. I needed time to think, to process everything. I drove to a nearby park and parked the car. Sitting there in the darkness, I let the tears come. The man I had met, Carl, his words echoed in my mind, compounding my grief. Emily had not only betrayed me with one man, but with many. The woman I thought I knew was a stranger, and the life we had built together was a lie. As the tears flowed, I felt a deep, searing pain in my chest. It was the pain of losing someone you love, the pain of betrayal, and the pain of realizing that the life you thought you had was gone forever. I cried until there were no more tears left, and then I sat there in the silence, feeling empty and alone. The betrayal was too much to bear. I didn't know what to do next. But one thing was clear: my marriage to Emily was over. There was no coming back from this. The trust was shattered, and the love I once felt was buried under a mountain of hurt and betrayal. I knew I had to move on, but I had no idea how. All I knew was that I couldn't stay in this place of pain and sorrow. I had to find a way to rebuild my life, even if it meant starting from scratch. And that journey, painful as it would be, began with letting go of the woman who had caused me so much heartache. I sat in my car outside our house for what felt like hours, trying to gather the strength to confront Emily. The pain from Carl's revelations at the bar was still fresh, and the anger I felt had grown into a seething rage. I knew I had to face her, to demand answers, and to put an end to the lies once and for all. With a deep breath, I walked up to the front door and stepped inside. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels ominous. Emily was in the living room, scrolling through her phone. She looked up as I entered, her eyes widening in surprise. "Mark, where have you been?" she asked, her voice strained. "I went to the bar," I replied, my tone flat. "Had a very interesting conversation there." She frowned, setting her phone aside. "What are you talking about?" "I know about your infidelity, Emily," I said, my voice trembling with anger. "I know about all the men. Not just the guy I caught you with, all of them." Her face paled, but she quickly recovered, her expression turning defiant. "Who told you that?" "It's not true." "Don T lied to me," I snapped. "I met a guy at the bar who's seen you there with different men. Not just once or twice, but often. He's seen it all, Emily. And you know what? It matches up with everything I've been suspecting." She stood up, crossing her arms defensively. "So what if I did? You've never been there for me. You were always busy with work or out with your friends. I was lonely, Mark. I needed attention, and you weren't giving it to me." "Are you seriously blaming this on me?" I shouted, my voice echoing through the house. "You cheated on me, Emily. You lied to me over and over again. How many times? How many men?" She stared at me, her eyes hardening. "You want the truth? Fine. I've cheated on you 43 times. Her words hit me like a physical blow. 43 times? I whispered, incredulous. "Yes, 43 times, she said, her voice steady. "And you know what? It started right after our wedding. I offered you an open relationship, Mark. I told you I needed more, but you refused. You insisted on monogamy, and I tried, I really did, but I couldn't do it. You weren't tea enough for me." My mind reeled. "You mean to tell me that you've been cheating on me since the very beginning? And you think this is my fault?" She nodded, her expression unyielding. "Yes, Mark, it is your fault. You made me feel trapped. You never listened to what I needed. You were so focused on being the perfect husband that you forgot about me. I needed excitement, passion, variety, and you couldn't provide that. Do you even hear yourself?" I asked, my voice breaking. "You are blaming me for your own actions, for lying to me, for breaking our vows." "Our vows?" she scoffed. "Those were your vows, Mark, not mine. I told you what I needed, and you ignored me. This isn't just about needs, Emily. It's about honesty, trust, respect. You could have left. You could have ended things instead of living a lie, but you chose to betray me over and over again." "I stayed because I love you," she said, her voice trembling. "In my own way, I do. But I needed more than what you could give me, and I found it elsewhere." Her words cut deeper than I thought possible. The woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted with my heart, was a stranger to me now. I felt my anger boiling over, a mix of rage and sorrow. "You call this love?" I shouted. "This isn't a love, Emily. This is betrayal. This is deceit. You've shattered everything we built together. For what?" "A few moments of excitement." "It wasn't just a few moments," she retorted. "It was freedom. It was feeling alive. Something you could never understand." "I don't think I can do this anymore," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I can live with someone who's betrayed me so completely. This marriage is over, Emily. There is nothing left to save." She stared at me, tears welling up in her eyes. "So that is it? You're just going to walk away?" "I don't see any other choice," I replied. "You've made it clear that you don't respect me or our marriage, and I can live like this." For a moment we just stood there, the weight of her betrayal hanging heavily between us. Finally, I turned and walked out of the house, leaving her sobbing on the couch. As I got into my car and drove away, the enormity of what had just happened began to sink in. My marriage was over, and the woman I thought I knew had been a stranger all along. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with pain and heartbreak, but I knew I had to face it, one step at a time. The days that followed were a blur of paperwork and emotional turmoil. Filing for divorce was a decision I never thought I'd have to make, but there was no turning back now. I had to protect myself from further pain and rebuild my life from the wreckage Emily had left behind. I hired a lawyer, a tough, no-nonsense woman named Sarah, who assured me that we had a strong case. I provided her with all the evidence I had: Emily's infidelity, the testimonies of people like Carl, and the financial records that showed I had been the primary provider while Emily squandered our marriage on fleeting affairs. In the meantime, I decided to make a significant change. Emily had always loved our house. It was her sanctuary, filled with her personal touches. But to me, it had become a place of betrayal and heartbreak. I couldn't bear to live there any longer, so I put it on the market. The divorce proceedings were grueling. Emily showed up to court looking defiant, her lawyer by her side. The courtroom was cold and sterile, a stark contrast to the heated emotions that simmered beneath the surface. Sarah presented our case with precision, detailing Emily's numerous infidelities and her blatant disregard for our marriage vows. Emily's lawyer tried to paint a picture of a neglected wife seeking solace, but the judge seemed unimpressed by her excuses. Throughout the trial, Emily and I exchanged heated glances, the tension between us palpable. Every word spoken in that courtroom felt like a dagger, reopening wounds that had barely begun to heal. One of the hardest moments was when Emily took the stand. She admitted to the affairs but continued to place the blame squarely on me. She claimed that I had driven her to seek comfort elsewhere, that I had been an absent husband who failed to meet her needs. "I loved you, Mark," she said, her voice trembling, "but you never listened to me. You never really saw me. I needed more, and you couldn't give it to me." Her words stung, but I remained resolute. "You could have left, Emily. You didn't have to lie and betray me." In the end, the judge ruled in my favor. Emily was ordered to pay alimony, and I was awarded a significant portion of our assets. But the real victory was yet to come. I had made arrangements to sell the house, and I knew that losing it would hurt Emily deeply. When the sale was finalized, I made sure she was informed in the most impersonal way possible, a cold, formal letter from my lawyer. The day she received the news, I got a call from her. "How could you do this, Mark?" she demanded, her voice shaking with anger and disbelief. "That house was my home. It meant everything to me. And our marriage meant everything to me," I replied coldly. "But you didn't seem to care about that. Consider this payback, Emily. Now you know what it feels like to lose something you love." She hung up without another word, and I felt a bitter sense of satisfaction. It wasn't much, but it was a small victory in the wake of so much pain. Moving out of the house was a surreal experience. Packing up our life together, seeing the remnants of our shared memories, was both cathartic and heartbreaking. I found a new place, smaller but cozy, where I could start fresh and begin to heal. The first night in my new home, I sat on the couch, staring at the blank walls. It felt strange to be alone, but it also felt liberating. I was no longer tethered to the lies and betrayals of the past. I had a chance to rebuild, to find myself again. I poured myself a drink and raised a toast to new beginnings. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. I had survived the storm, and now it was time to find peace. In the months that followed, I focused on healing. I took up new hobbies, reconnected with old friends, and slowly began to rediscover who I was outside of my marriage. The pain of Emily's betrayal would always be a part of me, but it no longer defined me. I learned to let go of the anger and embrace the possibilities of the future. Life was not what I had planned, but it was mine to live. And as I moved forward, I carried with me the strength that had gotten me through the darkest days, ready to face whatever came next. The house was gone. Emily was out of my life, and I was finally free. It was the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be.